Welcome back to the channel. All right. Today we are going to look at environmental science revision for Unit 1. Those are the grade 12 students. This is in preparation for their December examination 2023. And these questions will be past paper questions, paper 2 questions. All right, so let's proceed. Number 1 question says, draw a fully labeled diagram to fully illustrate the carbon cycle. And that's 5 marks. Now, the carbon cycle, as you can see here, the carbon is an element that is part of CO2 here, which is carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide is mainly in the atmosphere, and how the cycle takes place is that it will go into the plants and animals, into the soil, and back to the atmosphere. And as you can see over here, ocean uptake, the same process is going into the ocean and leaves the ocean. All right, so what we're going to do, I'm going to point out the main processes by which carbon leaves the atmosphere and the process by which carbon will re-enters the atmosphere. All right, so here we have a diagram. We have up here is the atmosphere, and down here, the brown section here is the soil. All right, so let's look at how carbon leaves the atmosphere. So the process, as we see here, is photosynthesis. Now, importantly, note how the arrow points. The arrow points directly on the plant, which means carbon will leave the atmosphere and it will go directly into the plant. So when you are doing your drawings, ensure that the arrow points where the carbon is going. Alright, so the first process here is photosynthesis. And of course, you label the diagrams and the arrows. Alright, so what we can see here, we have one main process by which carbon leaves the atmosphere. Alright, and we have three main processes by which carbon will re-enters the atmosphere. So one here, we have animal respiration, 2 plant respiration, 3 factory emission, and combustion. Now, for those of you who want further detail, what happened is that when carbon is taken in by plants, the carbon will be used to make simple sugar, right? Simple sugar will be converted into starch and be stored into the plant. Some of it will be used to make fruits. Alright, so the sugar will become a part of the plants because the plants also use back its own food. Now, these plants, when eaten by animals, carbon will move from the plant and become a part of the animal. So, whenever we eat food, the carbon become a part of us. Alright? Now, when that food is broken down in the plant cells by the process of respiration, carbon will be exhaled back to the atmosphere. Alright? As you know, we breathe in oxygen and we release carbon dioxide. That's for animals. For plants, they also go through respiration because respiration is a process by which energy is released from food. So plants, they normally use that energy to carry out their basic functions. Absorption, for example, absorption of water and nutrients, for growing, for translocation, etc. Alright, so plants, they use their own food. Alright, and the third main process here we have is factory emission or combustion. Now, combustion means burning. So if you burn plant parts, if you burn fossil fuel, any form of burning, it will give off carbon. back to the atmosphere. Alright, so as you can see down here, when these animals and plants are dead over millions of years, they will form fossil fuels or fossils. These fossils are extracted by we, human beings, which are then used to process and make petroleum, coal, gas, oil, and all of those chemicals that we use today. When they are burnt in the car engine or in the home or wherever, carbon is given off. Alright, ocean uptake. We have plants in the ocean, we have animals, so the same processes will take place here. Alright, so let's proceed to the next question. Alright, number 2. It says outline 3 ways in which carbon and carbon dioxide is important to organisms, and that is 3 marks. So here it says to outline 3 ways. Alright, so number 1 is carbon is used to make simple sugars, right, such as glucose, alright, which eventually forms complex sugars and carbohydrates, which is necessary to provide all living things with energy. Alright, so the first main function of carbon is that it is used to make food, and you know all living things need food for energy. Number 2, it says carbon in the atmosphere traps heat on the earth, thus prevent it from being frozen. So carbon is a greenhouse gas, and some of it is good. You know, too much of these greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is not good, but some amount is good. Alright. Number 3, carbon buried for millions of years forms fossil fuels, which is used by human beings for burning. Alright, it is used to provide electricity. Alright, it is used in the gas pan at homes to cook, and many more reasons. Alright, that's it. So let's proceed. Next question. Question 3 says distinguish between primary and secondary succession, and that's 4 marks. Alright, so in interpreting this question, they're basically asking for the differences, and it says 4 marks, so you want to put at least at least 4 differences if you can. Alright, so here, primary succession, a series of events through which a previously uninhabited region having no soil or organism gradually becomes a biological community. This community becomes more complex as new species arrive. Alright, so this is what happens, is that in an environment there are changes. You have to remember that there are changes. Some are slow and some are a little bit quicker. So primary succession is a change that happens in the ecosystem, but on an area of land that had no soil or no organisms or no plants on it. Alright, so the change starts from an area of land that was mainly rock. No soil was there. So what happened is that this change may take a very long time. So after you define it, you should put that the change is very slow. It takes a very long time. And biological communities, that climax community, that where you have your existing ecosystem, you have lots of plants, lots of animals living together in a community. All right, so this here was an important point. As I said, the first species that arrived on this new environment is called pioneer species. All right, and for the secondary succession, which is a much faster change is that, let me read, is a type of ecological succession in which an already established biological community has been disrupted and then reforms. So there is an existing biological community, for example a forest. It has the trees, it have animals, microbes, everything. All right, and then we have a bushfire. Bushfire destroys the plants, but then it will regrow back to its biological community. Now this change, after you define, then you know it is much faster than the primary succession, and that change can be disrupted by human activities, natural disasters, human activities like logging, deforestation, etc. We have two diagrams below. Let's look at them. So on the exam, this is just to help you. I don't know how you would fit diagrams in, but if you can always go ahead, but if not, it's fine once you can explain. But here is primary succession diagram. You need to know it. We have bare rocks. This is a piece of land. We have bare rock here. Start off by growing moss at the top. The moss dies, then moss forms soil here. Then we have grass start growing. So importantly, when you have the first initial soil, not all plants will be growing immediately. You might have grass, those plants that are easily grown and are known to be very hardy. They're mainly considered weeds. You're going to have a lot of weeds, especially grass. Then, as you have more decomposition taking place here on the soil, you have more soil being formed, then you have shrubs. These are plants that are not taller than 3 meters, but they are not very low. They are medium in size, like your guava trees, right? And some of your fruit crops. And then now, as the soil develops, you have larger plants called tree. They start growing, and you have more organisms, etc. All right, now this is where you have your climax community develop. The change will start to be very slow. It will not change very fast here. It is changing, but it will take very long. You will not even notice a change. All right, let's look at primary succession. Sorry, secondary succession. So secondary succession here, this diagram here shows an existing climax community. Sorry. So secondary succession here, it shows an climax community here already established. Then here it is destroyed by fire. Then you have barely soil remains, then it will start growing back. Shrubs, grass, a lot of plants will be growing here. And then you have your final climax community here. Please note, climax community, it is changing, but you will hardly recognize a change. Alright, so overall, the primary succession is slower than the secondary succession. Alright, let's move to the next question. Important point here is that secondary succession, point 1, established community destroyed, but soil is still intact, therefore it takes less time than primary succession. And 2, process typically begins with weeds and grasses that are able to grow quickly and proceed until a climax community is reached. Question 4. State 2 possible causes of secondary succession. Marks. Alright, number 1, human activities. For example, logging, clearing for farming, and construction. Alright, so cutting of timber, should be timber here, cutting of timber, clearing of land for farming and for construction. Right, and number 2, natural disasters. As you know, these may be like your fire, floods, your windstorms, etc. Question number 5. What is biotic potential? Question number 2. Alright, so this is a definition. So you're going to just properly define, as well as you can give an example if you know. Practice to give an example in your definitions to clarify your meaning. Alright, so biotic here, as you know, it means living thing. Bio means living, alright, and potential means ability. But let's go into the appropriate definition. Alright, so let me read. Biotic potential is the maximum growth of populations. Biotic potential is the highest possible vital index of a species. Therefore, when the species has its highest birth rate and lowest mortality rate. So, in simple terms, biotic potential means how fast its population can grow. So, for example, in a population of rabbits, how quick they multiply, for example, the fastest rate at which they can multiply and growing their population regarding the environment that they're living, that is referred to as their biotic potential. So in other words, on the other, if they're not growing to their maximum population size, maybe because they're under stress, maybe they don't have enough food, maybe they're being attacked by predators, their population might slow down. But if they're getting the right conditions from the environment, their population will grow as fast and as to a large population size as possible. So when you have organisms having as much births as they can, they are not dying, and their population is growing as fast as it can to the highest possible level, then that's biotic potential. Alright. Question number 6. It says, how does environmental resistance affects population growth in natural ecosystems? Alright, so they are just asking for you to, they want to see if you understand environmental resistance and to tell how it affects population growth of the organisms. Alright, so let's move to the answer. So environmental resistant factors are all the things that keep a population or organism from endlessly increasing. They lower the chances for reproduction, affect the health of organism, and raise the death rate in the population. For example here of these factors that can limit population growth. You have food, space, predation. Those are just 3 examples. Let me finish reading. All species have a biotic potential, which describes the rate at which that particular species reproduces when its reproductive growth remains unhindered and unobstructed. Alright, so in the environment, it naturally happens in the environment. So you have to understand, in a community, a biological community, an ecosystem, what happens is that organism population at times will reach its biotic potential, but at times it will be slowed down. It is naturally happening that way because the environment is limited on resources, space and food. There's also competition. So what happens is that naturally in the environment, if you have too many organisms being reproduced, what happens? They're going to need more. They're going to need more food, for example. So if they keep feeding on the environment, eventually there'll be lack of food because maybe the food is not being produced fast enough to supply enough to these new organisms. So what will happen? Some will start competing against each other for food. Some will be weak because they're not getting enough food, and then eventually they will die. So that is what happened in the natural environment. So naturally, the organisms, once food is plenty and space is plenty and the animals are free from predation, they will reproduce. They're happy, they will reproduce. That's natural for them too. They will reproduce, they'll reach their biotic potential. But then resources will become naturally reduced, and then those, that is called environmental resistant factors. When the resources are reduced, the organisms, their growth rate, they start dying, and so the population will be maintained back to a certain level. Alright, let's move on. Alright, so this is a diagram that shows you environmental resistance. So environmental resistance is up here. So this diagram here, and this axis here, we have the number of individuals. So as population size, sorry. So here, as population size, population rate increase, it will eventually come to a straight line at the top. Because environmental resistance, these factors like food and space, water, will cause the population to stop growing. Alright? Those factors that cause the population to stop growing, they are called environmental resistance. Alright, so question 7 here, I think it's referring to this diagram here. So it says, study the diagram in figure 1 and answer question A1 below, and that's for marks. Now question A, it says, A1 says, study the figure and construct a food web for the ecosystem above using the organism shown in figure 1. Alright, so it's a food web, and as you know, a food web is a complex food chain. So you have to have more than one food chain in the food web. Alright, so here we have seagrass. So let's go back here. So these are like seagrass plants, right? Snails, crabs, fish. I have all different types of fish here. So all you need to do is to just know ecosystem, know these food webs in the marine and on land. Just have a number of examples in your head. Just practice and research before your exams. Alright. So here we start with plants. Of course, you start with producer, and then you have the slug eat plants. Mackerel eat the slug, then the tuna eat the mackerel. Please note the arrow. Alright, right. Please note the arrow. And then the shark eat the tuna. And then also here, the crab eats seagrass, the mackerel eat the crab, and also the shark eat the crab and tuna eat the crab. So it's a complex food chain, basically. Alright, question number 8, it says, discuss 2 significant roles in the food web you constructed above. That's 4 marks, and it says 2 significant roles. It says discuss. So you know, you're not just going to define. You're going to write more than define. You're going to define, compare, give examples, explain. Alright? It's 4 marks. Alright, so number 1, it says the producers. Alright, so like for example, the seaweed here. So the seaweed, these are the first level of every food chain. These organisms produce their own energy through a process called photosynthesis. Of course, this will need more explanation. It says to discuss. Alright, so you could say the seaweeds now, what they do is they make their own food, which you know the energy is trapped from the sun. So the plants have that ability to capture that energy, and that energy is used later on to supply the other organisms that depend on these energy. And number 2, we have primary consumers. These consumers, though, the second level of which the food chain called herbivore, they eat producers and nothing else. The slugs, for example, you know, they eat plants, right? So Some animals, they don't eat plants, but yet they will need energy. So when those other organisms, for example, shark don't eat plants, for example, let's say, for example, the shark will eat the slug. All right, so shark may not eat grass, but they eat the slug to get that energy. So those plants, not all plants are herbivores. So when they eat the animals, those animals may have eaten plants before and get that energy. So the shark, for example, will be able to get energy from the slug without eating the grass. So you see, it's very important. Each level is very, very important. They pass on energy. So basically, these organisms help to pass on energy to other organisms that don't feed on plants, basically. Alright, question 9. Question 9 says, zone A, B, C are 3 different ecotones that exist in the diagram above. Define the term ecotone. Alright, so this is referring to the same diagram. Alright, so this is zone A, this is zone B, zone C. So as you can see, these zones, just interpreting the diagram here, these zones separates each ecosystem. So these are 4 different ecosystems. You have a mangrove forest, a lagoon, a reef crest, and a reef face. Right? All these are 4 different types of ecosystems, and these zones separates them. Alright, so the question says to define the term ecotone. Alright, so ecotones are transitional zones, call them borders, between 2 biomes. Biomes are ecological communities. Let's continue. Ecotones occur at multiple spatial scales, from natural ecotones between ecosystems and biomes to human-generated boundaries. So, naturally, in the environment, without human putting a border onto these ecosystems, ecotones exist. Ecotones are borders. You might not see a line drawn or a wire fence naturally, but there are certain area of land. It don't have to be a thin area. It could be a little broader area than what you expected, right? But these areas have plants and animals too, but they eventually separates the 2 ecosystems or more than 1 ecosystem. So ecozones are basically borders that exist in the ecosystems. It separates 1, 2 or more ecosystems. Alright. Question number 10. Explain how any 3 abiotic conditions which exist in zone A and its surrounding may influence the biotic components found in this area, and that is 6 marks. Alright, explain how any 3 abiotic conditions. Alright, abiotic conditions. Abiotic means all those non-living conditions like temperature, pH, humidity, salinity, sunlight, different gases and minerals. All of those are abiotic factors, and they do affect living things, which are the biotic factors. So the biotic factors are living things, and the abiotic factors, these are non-living things, and of course they affect the growth and survival of the living things. So these are the some other examples. Alright, so what do we have? Turbidity. So turbidity here is another as a situation that happen with abiotic factors that affect the biotic factors. So turbidity is caused by particles suspended or dissolved in water that scattered light, making water appear cloudy or murky. Particulate matter can include sediments, especially clay and silts. Alright, fine organic and inorganic matter solution, colored organic compounds, algae and other microscopic organisms like land plants, seagrasses required sunlight to survive and use for photosynthesis. Alright, the process of changing carbon dioxide, water and sunlight into energy and oxygen. So that is the definition of photosynthesis to make food. Good water clarity is in the lagoon, always sufficient sunlight to reach seagrass beds, which creates the perfect environment for them to grow and flourish. So what this is said, if the water is filled with soil particles, it might affect photosynthesis, and the plants, seaweeds, etc. might not function properly. They might not survive and able to photosynthesize properly. So that is what this is saying in short. Number 2 is salinity or even pH. So the pH now, pH is a measure of how acidic our basic water is. The range goes from 0 to 14, with 7 being neutral. pH of less than 7 indicate acidity, where pH of greater than 7 indicates base, which is alkaline, right? Algae activity is responsible for most of the variation in the lagoon. Algae consume carbon dioxide as part of the photosynthesis process, driving up pH. pH is highest in the late afternoon, up to about 7.6, where algae is most active, and lower just below dawn at around 6.8 as photosynthesis stops overnight. And because algae thrive in the surface layer of the lagoon, pH tends to be higher near the surface and drops as you get deeper. Lagoons are found at the mouth of the river where it connects to the sea. Some fish cannot live in too acidic water, therefore they are able to survive in lagoons because the water in lagoons is a mixture of salt and fresh water, brackish. The water in lagoons are more saline than fresh water, but less saline than seawater. Brackish fish are technically known as uralline species, which means they can adapt to different salinities. So what is said, we have two factors that are described here: pH and the salinity. So pH, if pH changes, it can affect algae growth. So that is what it is saying. If pH is not right at the lagoon, then algae will die. I know algae are plants. Alright, they help to photosynthesize and put energy in the ecosystem. Salt water too. Organisms, if the salt is not right, some fish will not be able to live in the water. So that's what it is saying. Alright, temperature is another factor. Temperature is the degree of hotness or coldness of an object or area. Temperature varies between 27 and 24 degrees Celsius. Snails feed off organic material like algae and bacteria, which grow in warm temperature. Alright, and therefore they prefer quiescent conditions with high oxygen and warmth, which make a lagoon ecosystem an attractive habitat for them to breed and live in. So what this is saying, if temperature is not right for the slugs, if it is not cool, the slugs will die. So the slugs need cool environment. So in other words, we should encourage and keep the lagoons cool. If you remove the plants from around them, drain out the water, then it might become hot. So alright, so and the slugs will die. So what is said overall is that living things, their growth and survival is affected by the non-living things. That is what it is. Alright, question number 11. It says, identify two limited factors which exist at the reef crest and explain how both factors may affect the population of coral in this area. 4 marks. So it's two things you're going to do. You're going to identify two factors and state how they may affect the population of coral. Alright, so this is referring to the same question here. So this is the reef crest. So the reef, which is the rock in the sea here, alright, when the waves come from this side, from the ocean, it will hit the reef crest here. So this is the face, and at the top here is the reef crest, right here. So a lot of wave will be hitting this area. Alright, a water can go up above it and it can go below. Alright, so let's look at what we have. It says limiting factors. These again limit population growth. Alright, so limiting factors, environmental resistant factors, almost can say they are same thing. So limited factors are anything that constrain a population size and slow or stop it from growing. The reef crest or algae ridge is the highest point of the reef and is almost always exposed at low tide. So if the waves or tides get low, the reef crest, the plants there will be exposed. No water is covering. That's what it says. Two limited factors which exist at the reef crest are incoming wave and light intensity and aerial exposure. Alright, so incoming waves. Due to the shallow location, low tide of the reef crest, corals are more susceptible to damage from the crashing waves. These large and powerful waves from the hurricane cyclone's high temperature, which is caused by global warming, can break apart or flatten large coral heads, scattering their fragments. A single storm seldom kills off entire colony. Alright, so when waves are too heavy, it will destroy the plants and the coral crest, the reef crest. Alright, light intensity and aerial exposure. Reef crests also are threatened by tidal immersion. Long periods of exceptionally low tides leave shallow water coral heads exposed to the air, causing them to dry out. Also be located so close to the surface, the reef crest receives a lot of sunlight. Of course, we know that sunlight plays a vital role in photosynthesis, but too much sunlight also causes coral bleaching. This damages these coral, causing a decreasing in the coral population. So overall, we see where there are certain factors that can limit the survival of these biotic factors, and there are some that encourage them. So in other words, living things, biotic factors require abiotic factors to survive. They need the right conditions. If conditions are not right, they will not survive. That's what it is saying. So that is the end of the presentation. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. I'll try my best to respond. Thank you.